Mexican pride. There's so many different options with this location, so much so that someone actually made a mod called Fallout Lone Star exploring the location a little bit more in depth. But to take that same idea and choose what I think is actually an even better location, although maybe a little bit biased, would actually be the Canada border to upstate New York. So I actually go to school in upstate New York and live in New York. There's a lot of history here that I think could create a really cool setting. So dating back before the Great War, where all these big bombs were dropped on the Fallout world, there was a bit of an oil crisis. Tensions were rising between the US and China over something that was called the Resource Wars. This would eventually lead to the Sino-Japanese War. This actually took place in kind of Canada and around that region of the world due to the abundance of some oil and again some of these different natural resources that were otherwise unoccupied. So the US put a ton of troops in Alaska, but it wanted to put more troops into Canada because that's where the pressure was really being felt by China. The US asked Canada, hey, can we move our troops through your country? They're like, no, we don't want any of that. Eventually, as the US moved more and more troops up there and actually had advanced technologies, the US did start putting power armor units up there, and then Canada was like, all right, fine, you could pass through here, but that's it. Well, while this was all going on, the US was actually secretly planning to annex Canada. They had planned this for about 4 or 5 years, and then after the Canadian government subsided and actually let them pass through their country, they started putting massive amounts of soldiers with advanced technologies in their borders until one day they said to Canada, all right, we're going to annex you now. Having so many soldiers in their borders and just having a weaker army in general, they subsided and the US and Canada became one. There's a lot of tension here though, as you may have guessed. A lot of Canadians were actually shot following these events. They're actually quoted in some of the different fallouts there. I think this could create an awesome setting, having kind of a national pride even so far after the bombs are dropped, with maybe a group of Canadians kind of hating the group of US people. There are a lot of really cool locations there. I'm a little bit biased again because I did go to school upstate. I used to go to the University of Buffalo. That's right around the border and right around where Niagara Falls were. On the other side of that is actually Toronto, one of the major Canadian cities. Between having a massive college campus, a national landmark, and of course that really big city, I think this could create a really cool location with the underlyings of the lore being built off of those tensions. But the one location that I think I would like more than anything else is actually Chicago. Obviously, it's a very iconic setting. It has some skyscrapers and it actually wasn't blown up by all these big bombs. This could be a location where we still have some existing skyscrapers, which I think could be very cool in a Fallout game. But the main reason I think I would really like Chicago is because it would bring back the Brotherhood of Steel and the Enclave, but this time the Brotherhood of Steel would actually be the bad guys. So you've probably seen some of the popular mods in Fallout 4 of the Midwestern Brotherhood of Steel. I'm actually posting a video later today with a new power armor from it. Chicago, and more specifically Bunker Alpha in Chicago, is the location and headquarters of the Midwest Brotherhood of Steel. Basically, the Brotherhood of Steel saw a rising super mutant army in that area, so they built these kind of flying ships, think the Pridwin but multiple, and sent them over to Chicago with a ton of troops. On the way, there's actually just bad weather, so a lot of these ships got really damaged and a number of them actually crash landed. To make a long story short, these people actually set up shop there and started creating bases in Chicago, and hence the Midwest Brotherhood of Steel was born. But they're actually an even darker version of the existing Brotherhood of Steel. They had a harsh rule over the local towns and villages. This was actually appearing in some of the early Fallout games. They talked about this, and they really abused, again, a lot of those local towns. They shot people, killed people, demanded taxes, stuff like that. Well, to build off that, do you remember Eddie, that robot companion you had in an earlier Fallout game? Well, if you actually did his companion quest, you'd find out that the Enclave have a holdout in Chicago as well. They had an oil rig set up off the coast, and following the destruction, a lot of those people did retreat back to Chicago. So having these two opposing yet powerful factions in this location, I think again could create a really cool game. Having a proper Brotherhood of Steel presence, not remnants of Brotherhood of Steel, but an actual Brotherhood of Steel with their headquarters and all the power and might they could offer, in addition to the power or maybe the last holdout of the Enclave, kind of turning things on a tide, giving you perspective, maybe actually having to make choices like, do you want to side with the Brotherhood or do you want to side with the Enclave? Each having their own individual pros and cons, I think could create an awesome and really unique setting, something that Fallout 4 hasn't properly explored